So welcome to those of you already here. I can see people are still coming in. We will begin the session in around 2 minutes, so still time to grab a coffee or put the kettle on, depending on where you are in the world. Okay, before we start briefly, can I ask the other guest speakers to turn off the notifications? It's a live storm notification system. It's a bell in the top right-hand corner. Otherwise, we'll be pinged every time people come in. But let's kick off. So first of all, welcome everyone to this second session in the Maniga webinar series this year. It's really great to see so many of you attending. It looks like we're setting a new record attendance for Maniga webinars. My name is Bragi Fjalldal, and I will be your moderator during today. So we have an exciting topic on the agenda today, namely carbon-conscious banking. And we will be discussing rising concerns about climate change among consumers and how this is affecting the bank sector. And in particular, the plan is to zoom a little bit in on what we call sort of the fast-growing movement of carbon-conscious consumers and explore what opportunities we see for banks when it comes to addressing their needs. And we are thrilled to be joined today by 3 impressive speakers from very different corners of the fintech space. So allow me to briefly introduce them. First up, we have Chris Skinner. Chris is known as an independent commentator and opinion leader on all things fintech. He is also the author of best-selling books, including Digital Bank, Value Web, and Digital Human. Chris is known for making bold predictions about the future of fintech, and lo and behold, from time to time, these predictions actually come true. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. And most of my predictions come true, apart from the ones I don't talk about.
That's very good. The oracle of fintech, Chris Skinner. Birna Einarsdottir has been the CEO of Islandsbanki since 2008. And before that, she spent 6 years at Royal Bank of Scotland. Now, Islandsbanki was Maniga's first customer. Back in 2010, the bank became the first European bank to launch a white label personal finance management solution. And now, 11 years on, the bank is pioneering Maniga's carbon footprinting service in the Icelandic market. Thank you very much for joining, Birna.
Happy to be here.
And then last, but certainly not least, allow me to introduce Sébastien Mandron. Sébastien has served as the CSR officer for Worldline Group since 2014. And under his leadership, Worldline has become one of the best rated companies for corporate social responsibility, recognized by rating agencies such as Ökom, MSCI, and Sustainalytics. Now, Maniga and Worldline have been partnering for more than a year now to bring Maniga's technology to Worldline's banking customers around the world. So welcome to Sébastien.
Hello, everyone.
So let's start with a little bit of housekeeping. So the agenda for today is as follows. We will start by setting the scene a little bit. I will highlight a few trends and statistics relevant to the discussion that we're about to have before we open the floor up to our distinguished guests. And I should say we welcome questions from the audience at any time, so you can post your questions at any time during the session. There is a designated questions tab on the platform. It should be somewhere on the right-hand side of your screen. If you don't see it there should be sort of a sidebar button that you can click to access this part of the platform. There's both a chat and a question tab. Now, I will monitor this question tab as best I can and raise your question when it fits the flow, or worst case, towards the end of the session if we have time. Now, since we have quite a bit of new faces attending today, so allow me then to briefly introduce Meniga before we kick off the formal session. So Meniga is in the business of helping banks develop new products and services on top of personal finance data. Our solution space today contains a lot of different things, like transaction enrichment, personal finance management, cash flow management, and many more things. And now, most recently, our Carbon Insights product. We have our products live with more than 170 financial institutions around the world, and we're very proud to work with many of the biggest and most innovative banks in the world, many of which are present in today's session. And we really see it as our role to be bringing new personal finance use cases and products to our clients every year based on latest trends, based on consumer needs, and so on. And we firmly believe that one of the most exciting areas of innovation in our space these days is really happening at the intersection of fintech and sustainability tech. And that is what has brought us to today's session. So zooming in on what we're going to be talking about today, concerns about climate change have really never been greater. And there's no shortage of surveys that can attest to this fact. What you're seeing on the screen here on the right-hand side is a recent survey by Pew Research Institute that was conducted across 14 countries. And according to that survey, 70% of consumers consider climate change a global threat. And there are many other surveys that will tell you more or less the same thing. But what is even more interesting is that multiple surveys, including this one, confirm that people are actually more concerned about climate change than they are about the global pandemic. And this is in the middle of COVID. And it's almost like the pandemic has taught us all, if we don't work together as a species to fight these global threats, to be a little bit melodramatic, then we are all kind of doomed. And it actually turns out that the very same people that are concerned are also quite tired, like tired of talking, tired of empty government promises, tired of lack of action. And this is sort of led to this sort of, rapidly growing movement of carbon conscious consumers that really crave to understand the impact they have on the environment and want to do something about it. And to me, carbon conscious consumers are no longer a fringe movement. It's really becoming quite mainstream. These are tech savvy people. They're affluent. They're very vocal. And in some ways, I feel like this is just a rapidly growing and extremely desirable segment for any consumer facing business to target. And these are people that are really, ready to make life choices and purchase decisions based on the impact that those decisions and choices have on the environment. And if you as a company want to appeal to this segment, it goes without saying, you need to take responsibility for your own impact on the environment. But to me and to us at Meniga, an even more important thing is to ask yourself the question, what do these people need and how can we better serve them as banks? And broadly speaking, it's simple. Carbon conscious consumers need two things. First of all, they need tools to be able to understand the impact they have on the environment. And that roughly translates into a growing interest from people to understand their carbon footprint. And secondly, they want the tools and means to do something about it, to participate in the fight against climate change. And equally importantly, every modern day consumer, they want these solutions served on a silver platter or a digital platter in the form of a mobile phone. They want it to be easy and intuitive to do. And serving these emerging consumer needs is, in our opinion, here at Meniga, not just the responsible thing to do, it's really a business opportunity not to be missed. And most consumer-facing companies are trying hard to figure out, what role can they play on this journey, and banks, of course, are no exception. And the way that we see it, I mean, sort of green consumer banking innovation to date has mainly, in this area, has mainly focused on green banking products like, ESG investment funds, green savings accounts, green loans, and so on. And there's actually quite a lot of innovation going on in that product space. And hopefully, once we get into the conversation, we can talk about those in more detail. But at Meniga, we believe that the opportunity banks have here is a lot broader. I mean, think about it. As custodians of our personal transaction data, banks have quite a unique opportunity to build like a digital journey that sort of covers all of the needs that we're looking at here. And it's all kind of starts with the carbon footprint. And I think it's important to mention that, because the footprint or the awareness of your impact is really the baseline from which you do action. And it's, in a way, probably the biggest gap in the market for carbon conscious consumers, because today all that we have at our disposal are online calculators that usually require a lot of interaction. They're questionnaires, they take a long time, and what you end up getting back tends to be fairly static and often not that accurate. So banks in some ways are in a unique position to make these individual footprints readily available to everyone based on live transaction data and fulfill this entire journey of needs. And we'll also talk about this hopefully once we get into the details of our discussions. But this is also an area where Meniga has recently launched a product that we will demonstrate to you in a video approximately midway through the session. But with that, my intention was really to shut up and give the floor to our distinguished guests and speakers. My thinking here was to start a little bit with Chris and taking a bit of a step back, because Chris, you've talked quite a lot about recently the concept of purpose-driven banking, and you see that as a major theme in banking in the coming 5 to 10 years. I wonder if you could sort of start out by elaborating a little bit on that.
Sure, and I look forward to Sébastien and Birna's input on how I open my view. I'm building on your view. In that there's a number of things that are coming together at the same time, and it's changing the whole way we think about everything, not just banking, but government, society, business, and life. And it's not the pandemic, it's actually something that was bubbling away for the last 20 years, but I think it's now bubbled over. And if I pick on specific themes, I'll probably choose 5. First is digital transformation, which we know that thanks to the pandemic, it's now matured into our everyday lives, as we work from home, shop from home, do everything from home, including conference call from home, like this event today. So everything is now digital, everything is now online, everything is in our phone, on our laptop, on our stream, our entertainment, our shopping, everything is from home. It's online all the time. And instant accessibility is a critical factor that we have learned not just to live with, but now depend upon. It's the mainstream of everyone's lives. Obviously, there are some who are not digital, and that's something we can come back to later on, because a question is, what about those who are not digital? But nearly everyone on Earth, if you look at the human rights needs that they have, Wi-Fi is one of the fundamental ones that they need to have. A second theme that I think was bubbling away for the last decade, in fact, it's been bubbling away for the last 50 years or more, is the climate emergency and the issues of the future of our planet and the worries we have about our planet and its future. And this is very much in the consciousness of everybody, as shown from your survey that you highlighted, in that it's more in our brain than the pandemic as an issue we have to deal with. I recently chaired a meeting in the Nordic Future Innovation Group that I run, NFI, where a pension fund manager said his biggest concern is not having anyone to pay a pension to in the future, because we'll all be disappeared. This is a very clear and imminent danger for humanity. How do we address that danger? And that's part of the reason why you have carbon conscious consumers. A third issue that is equally as big, in my view, is inequality and inclusion. And they kind of go hand in hand, and it's not so prevalent in some countries as others, but there are many countries where people have zero access to digital financial services. But where they do have access, the economy is much more buoyant and vibrant. And India has been a firebrand in this context for the last decade. In 2010, only a third of Indians had access to financial services. By 2020, 90% of Indians are being serviced financially online through digital inclusion. And digital inclusion is an amazing created concept that is changing our world, because if you have exclusion, it costs you a fortune to send a small amount of money. If you have inclusion, it costs you nothing because it's digital. Digital transformation, carbon consciousness, inclusion. 3 of the 5 themes I'll quickly touch upon. The fourth is that because of what's happening, we have digital transparency. So if a business is behaving badly or a government is behaving badly, we will know about that immediately, globally, because we can share that immediately globally. Just look at Myanmar right now, or Yemen. Look at the issues that Syria faces, or every country faces, where they have instability. Look at the fact that where there is instability, they move to digital currencies. Look at Venezuela. You're moving away from the Bolivar and towards Bitcoin. The fact is that nothing can be hidden in today's world. Is a radical transformation. And that combines with climate consciousness, carbon consciousness, and everything we're just talking about this afternoon, to create a new world. And this new world is the final point I'll make. It's a new world of what I would call stakeholder capitalism, where we are accountable, whether we're a bank or a business or a government, not just to our voters and our customers, but to society and the world in general. Stakeholder capitalism is the 2020 mantra that replaces shareholder capitalism. No longer is the shareholder the most important person in our business. We are accountable to our customers, our employees, our community, our society, our planet, and more. We're accountable to all. And if businesses behave badly because of digital transformation and transparency, the climate emergency, and inequality and inclusion, they will be held to account by their stakeholders. We are all accountable. I could say more, but I'll let the other guys fire away with their thoughts.
Well, thank you, Chris. I think it's super interesting, and also interesting to follow your commentary on this topic online recently and see how it's maturing. Maybe if I turn to Birna here, since we're talking about the concept of purpose-driven organizations. I mean, you're the CEO of a bank that I personally know takes sustainability, equality, and ethical leadership, and many of the points that Chris mentioned very seriously. I mean, would you consider Islandsbanki to be a purpose-driven bank?
Yes, I would surely say so. And those issues that Chris was mentioning, that is something that has been on our mind and my mind for the last 10 years at least. It it is extremely important that the bank, they need to have a sense of purpose, not only to attract talent, to work for them, but also at the same time attract customers. Those issues are getting more and more important, and I think we all need to, you mentioned the stakeholders and the shareholders. I think we should just think about it as Icelanders and as a part of this world. We all need to work together on those issues, not only for our business that we are focusing on every day, but just to ensure that we will be here and the pension funds need to pay us some money in a few years' time. So all those issues are, of course, extremely important. 2 years ago, we had a review of our strategy. That is something we do, of course, regularly. And we got in Boston Consulting Group to help out with this review. For us, it was extremely important that the focus would be on sustainability as a part of the strategy setting. Extremely important. We did work with the United Nations Global Goals. That is where we did put our focus. We had workshops with all staff members because we were going to choose 4 goals of those United Nations goals that we would focus especially on. And it was extremely important to see the interest of all staff and also, which of the goals they thought were the most important. And happy to say that climate was one of them, didn't surprise us. And gender equality, that is something that the bank has been working on closely for many years. And also education, another focus that bank has been working on, and then in innovation. And I think all those 4 focus points, when we have, then we continue. One is to set the strategy, as you all know, to set a strategy, sustainability strategy. But the big challenge, of course, is always to implement it. And to do so, we did set up many work streams, and we are very much in the middle of, and in some work streams even further than that, to implement what we want to do. And they both relate to the bank itself, how we operate, but also how we would like to work with our clients, especially on the lending side, and how we can encourage our clients to be more climate conscious, and how we could reward our clients if they do so. The banks are extremely important force for good in this aspect, and that is why it's important that we work on our how we are going to present it to our customers, and then work with the clients to improve it. So that is where we are today. We have done a lot in the last year or so, and there are many projects ahead, including what we will talk about maybe later, the new service from Meniga.
Thank you, Birna. And I also know that I have seen you guys have launched a whole bunch of sort of sustainable banking products on the lending side and so on. Could you mention a few of those, or maybe just the ones that have worked the best?
Yeah, that is of course mainly the green mortgage. That is based on if you are buying a flat in a house that has a certain certification, that then we are offering a better price for the mortgages. And that has been, I see many of our young customers are really interested in looking into this. The green car loan, that is another thing that we have been working on. But at the same time also, and we have quite many of those today, but it's also, so we can offer our clients better interest rates. We need to be able to fund those green the green part of our loan book. We need to fund it with issuing green bonds. And that is something that we did last year, the first bank in Iceland to do so. And it went very well, both outside Iceland. We did the Eurobond, the green Eurobond, and also in ISK. And it was very well received. And it was extremely interesting just to be in the investment meetings and hear the question and see how investors are more and more knowledgeable about sustainability.
No, that's super interesting and interesting to see how you continue evolving your climate strategy, not just on sort of yourself, but also together with your clients. And now turning to Sébastien, I mean, Worldline has been renowned for its progressive climate strategy for quite some time. And if I'm not mistaken, you were the first global payment company to become carbon neutral. Could you maybe elaborate a bit on your climate strategy, and in particular, tell us a bit about why it was so important for Worldline to lead the way in the industry when it came to addressing climate change?
Yeah, so what is interesting is that we have been carbon neutral since 2018, and this decision, in fact, has been made in 2015. Okay, so finally we speak about a decision that is already old by 5 years. Okay, and the decision for which we made this decision 5 years ago is because we have the feeling that it is in our capabilities to reach this carbon neutral situation by reducing CO2 emission and neutralizing, in fact, the remaining ones. For the people that are not well aware, when we speak about CO2 emission, there is, I will say, two parts of CO2 emission when you're a company. The first part is that the CO2 emission that you are emitting by yourself, for instance, your building, your data center, okay? And for the others, for which you do not have a strong grip, for instance, for the travels, or what your supplier are emitting. Okay, so the decision we have made within Worldline is for sure was to reduce our CO2 emission, engage that process, going to absolute reduction, going to renewable energy, and for the remaining one, for which you do not have any grip, when you take a taxi, when you take a plane, going for offsetting. So this is, I will say, a decision that has been taken 5 years ago, that is implemented, and covering, in fact, the full perimeter. But what is important, or what I think it's what is the conclusion that we draw from this topic? It is, I would say, the first level of maturity. And this is where the citizen start to have in mind, which is that first we have a concern that is called climate change, and second we need to do something, which is going for a kind of neutrality. And now, what do we do more? We see that in our side there are now two new levels of maturity that are going to come. The second level of maturity is definitively to go for strong reduction, okay? An absolute reduction, meaning that we need to mobilize two things. First, investment, okay, to decrease the CO2 emission. Second, involve people in the way they change their habits, okay. So this one will be drastically difficult, because you currently, in fact, if you start to think why a citizen how a citizen is emitting CO2 emission, is because he's having pleasure. Okay, when you wake up in the morning, what you are looking for pleasure. It could be travel, it could be food, it could be mobility. Okay, so all of the leisure that we are facing in our day-to-day life is generating CO2 emission. So now we are in a situation where, in fact, we need to change our way of working just to reduce this CO2 emission. And so this is where, in fact, awareness has been met for the first level of maturity. Second level of maturity will request execution, okay, in the way we live. And the third level of maturity that we start to identify, that start to pop up, but with, again, a higher level of difficulty, which is the capture of CO2 emission. Okay, on here, in fact, we start to touch the border, the frontier related to the nature, meaning capture, meaning in a simple way to plant some trees able to absorb CO2 emission. The issue is that when we speak about planting trees, it likes to be very green, very useful, a very nice idea. Unfortunately, there is not sufficient land on the planet to absorb the CO2 emission. Okay, and if the second step of maturity will request from the citizen a level of execution in changing their mind, the third level of maturity will change their ways they see the nature, because they will start to think, okay, I reduce my CO2 emission by having less leisures, but on top of that, now I need to take care about the nature. I need to think about the trees. I need to think on how my CO2 emission will be absorbed, and even if myself, I'm going to have some ecological actions to be able to capture the CO2 emission. So you see that in my process, in 3 steps, with these 3 levels of maturities, that will require, in fact, a couple of tools, because what we start to touch today is the need or the offer to propose to citizens a way to start to smell, in fact, what are their impact, because currently what they have in mind that there is an issue. Okay, it's not so clear to them what is the side of the issue and how to fix it. Okay, if you ask to the people what is your level of CO2 emission, nobody is able to answer to you. Okay, so I think that here there is a strong need, in fact, to make them aware and to make them in a position to go for the second step, which is how do I change my way of living? How can I have, in fact, an impact on my CO2 emission to be able, in fact, to be more compliant with our society? Because all of those things is related to the society, and people will need to move, not because we are going to put a law, okay, but because they will be convinced that this is the way to go. So you see, in fact, that currently what's happened in the last 5 years is the first level of awareness, because if you remember the COP21 that took place in Paris already a long time ago, okay, and we just speak today about that we need to do something, but it's just the first step. After, we need to go in the execution, especially changing the way we manage or we consume, okay, and after, what will remain on the table, which is the last very difficult part, which is the part related to the capture, for which we need to face difficult roles, especially regarding the physical topics related to the nature.
No, absolutely. And I think it's almost like you can look at how companies think about, companies need awareness, companies need ways to act, and the same applies to people in a way, I would say. So I can see we have questions starting to pop in. You can also vote for the questions so that we can prioritize them. I'm just going to pop out one question here before I move on, and it's a question to Birna. You mentioned the number of green products that you've put to market. If you had to pick sort of one of your consumer green products, which one has been most popular, and why do you think that's the case?
Yeah, I saw the question. The green car loan has been the most popular, and I think because of the very much the increase in cars with electronic cars. So that is where we see the biggest interest. But I think the green mortgages will also develop well when more buildings will be having the right certifications. Yeah.
Maybe a question to you, Chris. I mean, do you sort of on the topic of innovative, consumer-facing products in banking that sort of are geared towards, the environment? Anything that you have picked up on or interesting innovations in the past that's worth highlighting?
There's a number. The one I normally start with would be Ant Forest from Ant Group in China. Mainly because the idea was with one employee of the company in the mid-2010s, and it's now used by over 500 million people and has planted thousands of hectares of land with trees across the deserted plains of China and Mongolia. And since then, there's been many others who have replicated this idea, and it's something that Meniga's now built into your application, in that every time you pay for something, it has an impact on planet Earth. And if you know the impact it has on planet Earth, and whether it's good or bad, you can change your behaviors. And I think changing customer behavior through incentives and games, which is what Ant Forest has done, is a really important theme, because we all like to play games, and if we're playing a game that will do better for our society and our planet, then that's a really good game. Don't play bad games, play good games.
Oh, that's an excellent example, and what a good sort of leeway into Maniga's Carbon Insight product that I wanted to tell you guys about. So last year we launched a product that we call Carbon Insight that allows banks to enable their customers to estimate their carbon footprint based on their spending data in the context of the digital bank, and also to offset their emissions using certified offsetting programs. And now Islandsbanki is pioneering this product in Iceland. And before I ask Birna why they chose to do that, I'm going to try to show you a video here of the product. Not done this before on this platform, so let's hope it works. Let me see here. So when I play it, it has an audio. If you don't hear anything, you should have a button or something that appears on the screen. So click the screen, and you should hear the audio. So let's try.
Concerns about climate change have never been greater. In fact, surveys show that people are more concerned about climate change
and the global pandemic, which is why people want to understand the impact they have on the environment.
Can I ask the speakers to mute, please?
Consumers are ready to vote
with their wallets. And what's more, they want their bank to help.
Maniga can help you become the bank that empowers their customers to bank and consume more sustainably. Maniga helps banks seamlessly integrate a digital carbon footprint journey into their mobile banking apps. We automatically calculate your customers' carbon footprint based on their spending data. The carbon footprint is available real-time and can be explored in different time periods and across spending categories. A carbon value only tells you so much, which is why we relate it to things people understand. How many trees are needed to absorb your monthly emissions? How far can you drive your fuel-powered car on your annual footprint? The best way to give context to a carbon footprint is to compare it to others, either to global and national averages or other customers in your bank. Participate in community challenges to save money and the environment at the same time. A deep dive into the carbon footprint helps you better understand the source of your environmental impact. Zoom in on carbon-heavy categories and explore the details, or check out category-specific tips on how to consume more sustainably. Add personal information and data to further improve the accuracy of your carbon footprint. From carbon footprint insights to taking concrete action. Offset your flight, your fuel consumption, or your entire footprint via certified offsetting programs. Select from certified partners all over the world and take part in making a difference where it really matters. Explore sustainable banking options offered to you by your bank and expand your portfolio of green banking products and services. Managing personal finances and carbon emissions go hand in hand. Keep track of your carbon profile as part of healthy financial habits. All of these carbon insights and actions accessible within your favorite banking app. Why should your bank make this a reality? It's not just the right thing to do, it's a business opportunity not to be missed. Increase high-quality digital engagement. Set context for selling green products, strengthen brand, and build lifelong loyalty. Carbon-conscious consumers are here to stay. Be the bank that provides the solution.
So I hope you managed to see and hear that. Difficult with 100 people on and you don't know who sees what, but let's hope for the best. Birna, you saw it. You know what it is. And you decided to do it. You're on mute, Birna. And you're back.
Okay, I'm not mute now, am I?
You are on.
Okay. Yes, as you mentioned in your introduction, Islandsbanki was the first client of Maniga, and we are proud to be the first client, and we have been working together on all kinds of solutions since then. And we even invested in Maniga 2 years ago, if I remember right. And because we think that Meniga is going to be the one of the main fintech players in Europe. And we are very proud of the company and proud to have been the first client. And that is why we are very interested in launching this. We are going to launch this in end of March, being the first to sign up for it. And why are we doing it? We have done some surveys among our customers, and this climate issue is of a big interest to all, especially our younger group. And so it was no question about why we should do it. It was more a question when. I think also this is going to encourage not only the individuals as consumers, but also our corporate clients. And I'm sure that Meniga will get a lot of phone calls from corporate clients saying, I am not sure you're calculating my climate issue right, and so on, which is going to encourage them to do better. So I think it is a great opportunity, but because I'm talking about on the corporate side, there is also a big opportunity for a bank, for example, to be in the brokerage role when it comes to carbon offsetting for corporate clients. So there is opportunity for a bank to be moving things forward in this field.
Thank you. Excellent. And maybe to just turn a little bit over to either Sébastien or Chris. I mean, like, there's a reason that why Meniga is pushing this product because we feel the demand, and there's a lot of interest from banks, and we're now actually, implementing this solution for banks in 4 countries at the same time. But one of the questions that I have in my mind, I mean, like, how mainstream will this become? I mean, can we expect carbon footprinting to become a mainstream service? Something that we just expect our banks to be doing all over the globe. What do you guys think? You're pointing to Sébastien.
Yeah, no issue. No, I think what's obvious is that the trend is there. What we did not mention, whatever the market, is that there is currently a huge pressure, in fact, on the banks, especially by the NGOs. Okay, maybe in some cases it's not rational. Unfortunately, in fact, what people and citizens cannot see is the huge pressure of the investors. Okay, yeah. Investors, when you are a company on the market, they are raising questions to you every month. As CSA officer, I receive questions from the market every month. They ask me what I'm doing regarding inclusion, diversity, climate change, and so on. Even if I'm not, I'm not a brand that can be compared with the bank, but investors now they want to put their money where it's green. And the level of risk looks to be less reduced compared to others. Okay, so investors are now the most important stakeholder to manage regarding climate change. They are putting huge pressure, more than the customer, more than the government. Okay, and you can believe me, in fact, the pressure that is currently very important is on the banks. It is on the banks on 2 dimensions. The first one, it is related to the investment that they made, okay? Because the NGO, what they identify that if they put pressure on the banks to put money on what is green, it is contributing to a better planet. Let's put it in a neutral way, I would say. And that means that the banks are in position to demonstrate that first, they put their funding in the proper way, and second, they propose offers that go in the same direction. Meaning that all of those topics related to calculating, in fact, the footprint impact of the citizen, it's about, there is no way to escape. It will be definitively something that will be put in place and that will be pushed, in fact, by every bank. Okay, in different formats, through different channels, through different actors. But it will be a basic. You will need to know, at the end, what would be your impact. So for me, it's not something that is like Birna mentioned. It's not should I do it or not. The question is when should I do it? Okay, on the view that we have in Worldline is that if we have to do it, let's be the first one. Okay, in that case, when you are the first one, first you leverage the positive impact. Okay, you are the pioneer. Okay, second. And you can prepare the next wave. So definitively the wave is there, and after the question is how do you create more value, in fact, on that topic for the customer that should be in fact demanding. Okay, so for me that's currently, and it's connected with my first level of maturity. People start to think that climate change is a topic. Now how can I handle it? Okay, and having a tool providing visibility. It's answer, in fact, to that question.
No, absolutely. Chris, you look like you're going to say something.
Yeah, I've got an issue here, and I'd be interested in all three of your views on my issue. Because my issue is, do customers really care? And the question really comes down to, would customers actually be bothered to go to a bank or a financial provider that's green versus the one they currently have, particularly if the one they currently have offers them better interest rates on their savings and loans? So Birna, maybe you can pick that one up, because I think most customers and most of society doesn't give a damn about the carbon emissions of the banks and their customers, as long as they have safe savings and good returns.
Yeah, I could come on this. We have done research asking, is it important for you that your bank has a sustainable strategy when it comes to climate, for example? And the answer is that yes, there is an interest among our customers, both the corporate clients and the retail clients. And but I agree with you, Chris, though, and it is not only to do with banks. Consumer can be quite lazy, and they are in the banking sector. There is a high loyalty. So would people be changing a bank because of this? I think that is a small group that will do that, but they will not be happy with a bank that is not a concern about those issues. I think that is more the first step. But in the future, for young people, when they are deciding on the first mortgage and the first savings account and so on, I think it's increasingly important.
Let me put it a different way. I mean, if a financial institution seriously committed to carbon consciousness, do you think that would be a strategy that would attract customers, or would it just be something that would be a marketing campaign?
I am sure, for example, if Islandsbanki would not have been the first bank to launch the carbon insight, but someone else would do it, our clients will ask. They would ask, why are you not offering me this service? And I'm not saying there will be possibly 5-10% of customers that would be asking. And that is a growing group. And that is why we were so happy to be able to join Monica on this project, because this is something that you possibly don't put on the top of the list to develop, but doing it in partnership. That is a very much of a fintech partnership that I would like to see. Someone would collect to have a functionality, which in the long queue in the banks for mandatory and regulatory issues to solve, this is a typical project to work with a fintech company outside for our clients. Chris, you are not very negative about this.
Let me ask one last time in a different way, and just I want to be really clear. Do you think that your customers will close accounts and open new accounts with another bank if the bank was truly carbon conscious?
Young people, probably, yes. But as I mentioned before, you are not only attracting new customers, you are making your existing customer happy. And I know that a big part of them, I know how big part of them are interested in this subject, are worried about this subject, and that is why they appreciate that the bank is doing something about it, helping them to manage this. Chris, you need to open up.
I think, it's an interesting topic, and it's an eternal topic, I think, for banks. Is like, what does it take to get people to switch? But I think we've seen, I think switching is on the up, but it's not just about losing the customer, it's also about losing the customer's attention, and the right to serve them with new products and services, like the transition we've seen very much in big parts of Europe, in the UK, for example, to challenger banks, where you not necessarily close all the services you have with your bank, but your attention and your appetite for new business resides in an app that's different from the bank. And I think that's why banks need to be on their toes to be actually not just the sort of, the place you keep your money until you're spending on something else, but actually that banks become that trusted advisor that advises people how can you bank or spend your money more sensibly, but also more sustainably. And I think unless you're going to be the bank that innovates, the bank that brings these services, you might lose that edge.
I think you have the headline and you have the heartline. And the headline is, I will go wherever the money is to get the best returns. The heartline is, I really sympathize with Greta Thunberg and everything that's going on with the decimation of our planet. But at the end of the day, my head says I don't give a stuff because I'll get wherever I get the best returns.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a head over heart thing.
I think so.
Or a heart over head, depending on if your glass is how full or how empty. But I think this is also part of the trend, and it's part of the change that's going on. It's I think people are becoming more and more serious about, voting for the environment with their wallet. It doesn't necessarily mean that, you will sacrifice everything, but it means that you're maybe willing to pay, £50 to offset your footprint. Or it means you're willing to go a certain distance.
That's the critical question I'm really asking, in that, I think all of us, not just us four, but everybody on this call, would say the planet and carbon emissions and the future of our world is important. But how many of us would actually put money into that and stake our accounts on that future?
Currently, it's impossible to answer to that, because currently people don't know what does that mean, climate change, because nobody see a CO2 emission. So we are in the physical world. So if you ask the people what does that mean, plus 2 degrees, as I'm French people will tell me, yes, Sébastien, it's a very good news, because in Paris, in Brussels, in Amsterdam or in Berlin, it will be the French Riviera. So let's be clear. It's very good news, to take these 3 degrees. So this is what the people have in mind, more or less. The reality is quite different. We did not say to the people that 3 degrees, it is the difference between today and the ice age. The ice age, just 3 degrees. When the ice was coming to Berlin, and you can go to London just by walk because everything was frozen. Okay. And the temperature is increased by 3 degrees, in 10,000 years. Here we speak about plus 3 degrees is 100 years. We did not say that to the people. Once you start to put that in motion, you start to understand that the things are not going perfectly well, and the impact will be massive for the planet. Okay. So once you did not touch that topic, okay, and you see, my car is consuming a lot of benzene, a lot of energy and creating a lot of emission. That's bad, but I continue like that. But it's quite difficult to touch this topic, and we did not make the awareness. We did not say to the people what is in front of them. But once the people start to see the things, we cannot expect they are not going to change. So I think things are moving. And what we saw is that things can move very, very fast from one day to another. So definitely, the company that will be prepared will be ready to continue to move, and the other, they will be stuck.
Chris, I think that the younger generation is, of course, more interested and more concerned, and I think they will consume differently.
I agree with Birna. I think this is a change in motion. I think, and one that's been accelerated by the COVID pandemic. I mean, if we keep thinking about our own bottom line and ignoring everything else, we'll probably end up in a place that nobody wants to be in. And I think it's the younger generation, but I also think it's sort of the middle-aged group, people with kids that want to leave behind a decent planet for the people that they're raising. There's so many questions popping in, and time is running. I just want to pick one that got a lot of votes here. And it talks about, financial institutions' main mandate is financial mediation. 5 years ago, analysts suggest that banks would take up the role of identity providing, a prophecy that hasn't come true. But the main question is, what monetizable value do you see from carbon consciousness for the banks? And I want to pick up on something because it's asking about business model. And Birna, you said that for banks, it's an interesting position to take up to become a broker or a mediator for carbon offsetting, in particular for companies. But what about individuals? I mean, is this something that you could envision taking up for your consumer customers too?
Yeah, I think that is another opportunity. But I think I have been speaking to startups that are considering those issues and would like to move into this business. And I am very interested in what they are doing, and we might be participating in some of them. So I think it might probably start on the brokerage for corporate clients, but I can see the future also on the retail side. But of course, that would be more just done through digital channels and so on.
What about you, Chris? Would you offset your annual footprint if it was offered to you by your bank? You're on mute, Chris.
I think, and that was the point I was making, is that we all believe we would like to be good citizens. But if you think about before the pandemic, and when you book a flight, did you book the carbon offset as part of your flight booking? How many of you can look into your hearts and say, yes, I did, and that's important to me? Now, when we look at financial services, yes, I think we can change people's behaviors, and Ant Forest that I referenced, along with Meniga's carbon conscious project, could change behaviors. However, would we seriously change behaviors if it cost us money? And that is where today, even in 2021, I think we still have an issue. Even with young people, you made the point, young people think differently. If there was a financial penalty for not treating the planet fairly, would you pay that penalty? And to be honest, I'm not sure. I think there's still a way to go, and the major activity has to come from governments and financial institutions to change that behavior, particularly from financial institutions, because so many financial firms are enabling fossil fuel firms to continue to abuse the planet. We have to stop that. And that will only happen with incentives to change behaviors. So there has to be incentives that are financial, not just emotional.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. Incentives instead of penalty. I think that there's a way forward for governments to take this issue forward.
Absolutely. Now we have come towards the end of the session, and I'm a little bit sad that we didn't have time to take more questions from the audience because they keep popping in. But it just goes to show what a hot topic this is, and from our perspective, I think it's just a privilege to be allowed to be part of trying to figure out the solutions, and it's encouraging to see that there's really an acceleration in the financial services industry in terms of doing innovative things with on the sort of crossover of fintech and sustainability. Any last words from you guys before we shut down?
Yeah, maybe last comment, because I think Chris has a clear view about the situation, which is why to put money on something that is so difficult, in fact, to assess. I think for me, as a company, I see the investor. Whatever you want to do, the investor are going to tell you what you will do, and you will need to put money. And especially with the new regulation that is under construction in France, where in fact your revenue will be split between green and non-green. By default, everybody will fight, in fact, for green, even if it's a label. So at the end, in fact, we are not in position where, in fact, we are going to ask us what we could do or what we should do. So that's for me the big wave. And so for the company, the way is pretty well identified. So what remains on the table is the human being, and the concern that we have is that climate change is currently against the human being. Meaning, as I mentioned, in fact, we are in a society where your leisure, by default, is generating CO2 emission. All that what you want when you wake up in the morning is to save time to get more leisure. On getting more leisure, okay, it's generating CO2 emission, except if you want to read a book during the day. But if you use Netflix, you generate more CO2 emission. If you use Amazon, you generate more CO2 emission. Same for the travel, same for the food. So the question that is asked to us as offsetting is not a solution, as capture is not a solution. The question is, how do we reduce our leisure? How do we reduce our consumption? That drive to a second topic, which is, in fact, how in a society can we live or can we progress with limited growth? Voilà. So, but the first point is human being. Does that mean that I want to change my phone every 2 or 3 years? Okay. Do I want to take the plane several times per year? Do I continue to have an intensive mobility with my car? So all of those things, does not require any law. So, but you see that to all my questions, the answer is no. To all my questions, my answer is no, because you are looking for leisure. You are not looking for reading books every day. So that's where the issue is. That's the reason why it's so difficult. Even if everybody will be convinced, you will have limited communities. So currently it's young people, okay? They say, yeah, I want to save. Even if I agree with Chris, they want to save, but they start by a phone. They spend their time on Netflix and so on. They are consuming more than us when we were young in terms of CO2 emission. But that's the reality we are going to face.
I just my final. I just look forward for launching this in the end of the month and see the uptake and see the interest of our clients. But I'm going to remain positive about that my customers will choose right.
I'll keep it simple. Don't be evil.
All right. Well, thank you so much, guys, for taking the time and for a great discussion. And have a very good afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.